everybody, my name is Lana. Welcome back to my channel. I am so happy that you guys are here and ready to talk about shadow work. So shadow work is basically the parts of you that have been suppressed. So they've probably been suppressed since your childhood. So when we're thinking about shadow work, we want to look back on our childhood, think about what type of child we were, think about what did you like to do, what was your personality like, things like that. So when you think about your shadow work, really get in tune with your inner child. What did your inner child need? What did your inner child like to do? So your shadow self is also known as your authentic self, who you really are. And your shadow self can hold a lot of things in your unconscious. You're not really aware of what you're doing or why you're doing it. So the conscious self is like your ego, but your unconscious self is more of your shadow. Your shadow is very important because it can hold some very good traits within it. It can also hold some bad traits within it. So it really just depends on your circumstance and what you've experienced, what you've been repressing. As a child, what was encouraged? What was punished? What traumatic experiences did you have? What are some things that you probably haven't talked about in some years that probably happened to you as a child? Those are some things you want to think about. When we are children, we're very impressionable. We are always searching for, what's right and what's wrong, like what's the proper way to behave. And, who teaches us that? Our parents or our guardians or whoever is in our household that is supposed to be raising us or taking care of us. Those are the people who teach us. And they may or may not always do it in the best way. And so it's very important to kind of take yourself back to those moments and think about what you experienced as a child and how did it make you feel. In order to get to the good, so how I was saying you have some good traits that could be in your shadow self. But in order to get to those good traits, you have to get through the bad. You have to get through the uncomfortable parts of the shadow self, the things that you've been suppressing for many years. This is why shadow work is important, because there's many benefits from doing the shadow work, but it can also be very hard to do the shadow work because it can be very uncomfortable. What does it mean to you is what you really have to ask yourself. What do you want to gain from doing this shadow work? So just some benefits that I know of from doing shadow work, just from doing research and listening to like spiritual people on YouTube and just other people that I follow that are very into spirituality and just psychology in general. Some benefits of doing shadow work are improved relationships, just a better sense of self, more confidence. You can also have greater creativity, and you will also be able to get rid of the unhealthy coping mechanisms that you've probably adopted along the way to help repress all of those things that you've experienced in your childhood that you no longer want to deal with. Think about, the things that you do, whether they be unhealthy or, just something that you wish you didn't feel the need to do all the time, and ask yourself, when did this start? How did this happen? You might be able to trace it back to your childhood and something that happened to you in your childhood. So this is why shadow work is so important, because like as a kid, we are being developed, we are being molded into people in society, and so we're gonna experience different things and act accordingly, whether that be your accordingly is like what your parents accept, or just what society accepts, or just any adult in your life, like your teachers, aunts and uncles, like adults in your life that were very influential to you. Think about the people in your life that were very influential to you, the people who made a lot of impact in your life and your relationships with them, moments in time that you had with them. How did it make you feel interacting with them? Were there specific moments that made you feel uncomfortable? Were there specific moments that made you feel unheard? where there, and it doesn't even have to be a moment that like you're having an actual interaction with someone else. It could just be what you saw in your household. So like your mom and your dad, how was their relationship? Did they argue a lot? um, was it a very loving relationship? Was it a lot of physical altercations? Like all that stuff, just seeing that as a kid is gonna be in your shadow self, and you'll develop behaviors to adapt to those situations. So, you know, whether the situation be good or bad, you're gonna develop some type of behavior to go with that interaction you've had with somebody, or just your environment and observing what goes on in your environment. You're going to develop some behaviors, and those behaviors will follow you into adulthood. But meanwhile, you're like suppressing the actual event that led to the behaviors, and you kind of forget why you're doing it. You're just doing it because it's like instinct, kind of like a defense mechanism. But in this case, it's a coping mechanism. So let's get into like actual exercises of how to actually do the shadow work. So one thing you can do is you can meditate. So meditation is very important, and it can give you a moment to reflect. It can give you a moment to think and really observe your thoughts. Another thing you can do is just have inner dialogue with yourself. So really just talking to yourself when you are experiencing a certain emotion, or you are, you know, find yourself constantly doing this coping mechanism, this constant habit, asking yourself, why do I do this? When did this start? And when I started doing this, what was going on around that time? You know, a lot of our behaviors can be linked back all the way to our childhood. So that's why it's very important to always go back to childhood if you can. Some behaviors might not always be linked to childhood, but it can be linked to trauma in general. You know, you don't always have to look at your childhood when doing shadow work. Just look at your trauma in general, times in your life where you felt very distressed, emotionally or physically. So yeah, meditation, inner dialogue, also journaling. So writing down whatever you're feeling. I know for me, when I'm journaling, it's a lot easier because I can just write. It might not look neat, but I understand it, and it makes me feel like I just got it all out on paper. Journaling can be an alternative, or you could do like meditation then journal. So meditating on your thoughts and feelings, thinking about, you know, your past or whatever, and then journal about it, reflect on your meditation. That also is very effective. And also just observing yourself. So observe yourself in those moments where you feel like you are acting out on those coping mechanisms. I know for me personally, I feel like my coping mechanism is when I feel like I'm being slighted, or like somebody hurt my feelings or something, I tend to shut down, and I won't tell anybody like, oh, you hurt my feelings, or oh, I didn't like that, or please don't talk to me that way. It's hard for me to say those things to people, especially people that I love and care about. Very hard for me to say that to those people because of trauma that I went through in my past. And one thing I have learned to do is observe myself. So observation of self is very important. Like when I feel like somebody's trying me, I observe myself. How am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? What I've learned about myself is oftentimes I feel that I don't have a right to say anything, or I feel like nervous to say something because I feel like I'll be invalidated for my feelings. And when I observe those thoughts, I'm like, okay, this is what I'm thinking, and I can link it back to my childhood, when I oftentimes try to communicate with adults in my life and I was not heard. I was told I was tripping, too emotional, I'm just a kid, I'm the, you know, you the child, I'm the parent, I can talk to you any way I want to talk to you type of attitudes, you know. So that was instilled in me, and so therefore I felt like the people I love, or just people I love in general, like had the right to talk to me any type, like not had the right, but I just struggle with telling myself like, okay, you have the right, if that person loves you, like they truly say they love you, they want to hear, oh, you hurt my feelings, if that's how you feel. You know, people who really love you care about how you feel. I had to tell myself that. I have to analyze my thoughts, take it back to the past. Okay, this is where these thoughts started, and then try to reconstruct those thoughts into healthier thoughts and reassure myself that these thoughts are not true, and implement it in a way where I can feel more confident about standing up for myself and telling people, you know, they've hurt me and they've done something that rubbed me the wrong way. And it don't even have to be, and that's the thing, like for me, I've never experienced a moment where I've stood up for myself. Well, I have, but as a child, I never experienced moments where I stood up for myself and it didn't become a huge deal. It didn't become a whole like blow up in my face type of situation. So that's why usually I would shut down, and sometimes I still do. I would shut down and just be like, okay, I'm just not gonna say nothing, because if I do say something, it's gonna backfire on me, blah 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 blah. But now I've learned that, you know, but pushing myself, like, okay, you have to say something, because you're gonna feel worse if you keep it inside. You're gonna hold grudges against this person if you keep it inside. You're gonna always feel some type of way about this person if you keep it inside. So I push myself to say something, and then 9 times out of 10 the person will be like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even realize I made you feel that way. They'll say, oh yeah, I said that and I could see how you took that the wrong way. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it like that. So 9 times out of 10 it turns out well. It turns out the person is understanding because they do care about me and they love me. So telling myself that was something I had to learn, and like not being afraid of the people who love me, and like knowing that if I do experience that again where somebody blows up on me for saying how I feel or how they made me feel, that I should leave that relationship alone because it's probably toxic. So it's just like, but as a child you don't realize what toxic is. You think all the adults around you are perfect and they know what they're doing and they're right, and you know, you must be doing something wrong if you make them mad. Like that's how I felt as a child. Like if I made an adult in my life mad, or I was doing something wrong, you know. And now I'm older and I know that nobody's perfect, and a lot of these adults in my life have their own issues that they have not worked on themselves, and they need to do their shadow work too. So you know, it's like a growing experience, and it's a process, because I still have my moments where I am not 100% my authentic self, and telling people how I feel, and telling people what made me feel a certain way, and telling people I don't like when you do this. Like it's hard for me. So I'm still working on it. All those exercises, the observation of self, and especially observation of self and the inner dialogue are very important, because you can talk to yourself and just like bounce off of your own thoughts and be like, hold on, is that really right? Like, is it really right if you tell somebody how you feel and they get mad at you? Like, that's not right. Okay, so like now I'm talking to myself and I'm reassuring myself. That's important. So some tips for this, right? Ask yourself, what does your inner child need? Maybe you needed to cry some more. Maybe you needed to like just scream. Like for me, I feel like I just needed to scream because I felt like as a kid nobody heard me. Like, and so I feel like I need to scream. So sometimes I just scream. You know, it might sound weird, I don't know, but sometimes I just do it. And sometimes, you know, I talk to myself because I feel like my inner child needed somebody to listen, like really listen. So I listen to myself. So like I said, trace your trauma back to a moment. So a specific moment, if you can. If you can't remember the specific moment, trust me, as you start doing more and more shadow work, like things that you suppressed will come up. So like memories that you like thought you forgot, or memories that might not necessarily feel real, like did that really happen, or am I just thinking that, like, made that up? Like it's probably really a memory but you just suppressed it so much that you don't even know if it's real or not. So as you start doing shadow work and looking back on your past and applying it to your future and how you can improve yourself in the future, more and more things will come up. But another tip is just be very like compassionate with yourself. Don't be hard on yourself with this process. You know, we're all humans, and really a lot of stuff that happened to us as children, we obviously did not deserve that type of treatment. We're innocent children at that point, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we don't deserve it. We're just trying to figure it out as kids, and you know, we're depending on the adults in our lives to lead us a certain way and teach us a certain way, and sometimes they don't get it right, and that's because, you know, they never did the work to make sure they got it right. You know, it is what it is. As an adult now, all you can do is break the cycle and do the work that you need to do so you don't bring that same trauma onto other people. But like I was saying, more and more things will come up, more and more memories might come up. And so when that happens, unpack slowly. You have all this stuff and you keep remembering, oh, this happened, I remember this happened too, and like, oh, like everything's connecting. You keep seeing these same patterns popping up. Unpack slowly. So focus on one moment at a time and deal with that moment and really go back to those emotions. How did you feel that again? Like, it hurts, it does hurt, but you have to feel it again and process it. And do it slowly. Don't do it all at once. Don't try to unpack everything all at once, because it's a lot. You need time, and you need to be patient, and you need to be compassionate with yourself. When you are feeling all this stuff, first things first, you have to face it. Face that it happened. Face that it's something that really happened in your life, and it's traumatic. It was traumatic, and it affects you today. And then next thing you do is feel it. How did you feel? Were you hurt? Were you sad? Were you disappointed? Like, how did you feel? And then once you really feel it, you know, write it. You could write it down, or whatever feel it means to you, whether it means writing down how you feel, or just talking about how you feel, or writing a letter to the person that made you feel that way. If that's what you want to do, that's not necessary if you don't feel comfortable doing that, but if that's what you want to do. And then once you feel it in whatever way you want to feel it, the next thing you do is release it. One thing for me, I think writing things down, deep emotional things that like I feel like I need to release, I'll write it down and like burn it. Like, release it, burn it, and let it be. It is what it is. Like, you know, so it's important to feel this stuff, but it's also important to release it and know that you are not there anymore, and you are only improving from here on out. You're not going to let the trauma and the burdens carry you on for the rest of your life. You're not about to keep on letting these coping mechanisms control your life and keep you from your happiness, keep you from your creativity, keep you from, you know, great friendships and great relationships with people. You're not going to let this trauma keep you from being your authentic self. So the release part is very important. When we talk about shadow work, we want to be very intentional with what we want to focus on, but we want to be compassionate with ourselves and give ourselves time to unpack it all. Okay, so don't try to unpack all your stuff at once. Like I said, it can be very hard to just unpack one thing. Okay, like, speaking from experience, it's hard to just unpack one thing. And if you know, we all have had our different experiences. I know some people might have experienced more trauma than others, or just more like frequent trauma than others. You know, we all have different paths, different histories and stuff. But you are not your past. But you do need to deal with it in order to understand like the things that you are doing now that might be unhealthy for you. So that is all that I have today for our video over shadow work. And I just want to tell y'all, like, it's not always super easy to do this work, okay? And it can really make you feel a lot of different emotions. Like I felt like sadness and disappointment and like anger. I've also felt happy because I'm just like, okay, like now I'm understanding why I'm doing these things. It's not like I know this is not really who I am. It's just the coping mechanisms that I'm holding on to. I know this is not my authentic self, and I have the ability to be whoever, whatever I want to be. So yeah, you can feel a lot of different emotions. So that's why I really want to emphasize like making sure that you be patient with yourself and be compassionate with yourself. So thank you guys so much for watching. I think for my next video I want to talk about chakras, so it'll be a little more lighthearted. And I think like each chakra is just so interesting and like has so many like facts about it, so many like things that go with it, and I've really just been studying it a lot more lately, and so I want to share a little bit of that with y'all. Like I always say, I am learning. We are learning together, so I don't always know everything, and I won't sit here and act like I do. I'm just showing you kind of what I've been doing for myself, and also like just sharing and kind of being a little vulnerable, as you can see with speaking of my own experiences. But I feel like you have to kind of be a little bit vulnerable in talking about these things and sharing these things with people, because it's really like a deep personal journey. It's part of your journey, and your journey is going to cause you to be vulnerable, because we're all here to learn something. We all have a lesson to learn. Thank you guys again so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe. Also comment, you know, what are your ideas about shadow work? What are some exercises you do to practice shadow work? And let me know if you end up trying any of the exercises I mentioned in the video, because I would love to hear it. Also turn on my post notifications to get notifications about more videos as I upload. I definitely want to put up the chakra video very soon, so keep a lookout for that. And yes, I just want to thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch, and I just wish all of you blessings, and just remember who you are, remember what you made of. You have the power to do anything, and I will see y'all next time. Bye.